name is Kasif and I'm going to start with a very interesting topic about the Indian polity. Okay, so Indian polity plays a very important role in your SSC examinations, and Indian polity covers almost 8 questions from the SSC examination question papers. Okay, so let me start with a very simple topic of the Indian polity, and that is your fundamental rights. Very important topic, that is the fundamental rights. What are the fundamental rights? See, first of all, what you need to understand is what are the fundamental rights and where they have been mentioned in the Constitution of India. So now, let's see, first of all, that the fundamental rights are mentioned in the Part 3 of the Constitution. They are mentioned in the Part 3 of the Constitutions, and Article number 12 to 35 deals with it. Means the fundamental rights are mentioned in the Part 3 of the Constitution, and Article number 12 to 35 deals with it. Part 3 of the Constitution and Article number 12 to 35 deals with it. Now, what you have to do is that you don't have to remember the Article number 12 and 13 because they are the introduction part of the fundamental rights, and Article number 33, 34 and 35, they are the conclusion part of the fundamental rights. What you have to remember the fundamental rights is from the Article number 14 to Article number 32. Okay. Now the question arises is that from where the fundamental rights have been borrowed in the Constitution of India. Actually, the fundamental rights in India has been borrowed from the Constitution of USA. The fundamental rights have been borrowed from the Constitution of USA. The Constitution of USA. And the Constitution of USA is popularly known as the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights. Okay. So the Constitution of USA is known as the Bill of Rights. Okay. It is also known as the Bill of Rights. So many a times in the questions it is asked that the fundamental rights has been borrowed from where. So the option contains not USA but the Bill of Rights. So that's not an issue because the Constitution, fundamental rights in the Constitution have been borrowed from the Bill of Rights. That is, you can say it has been borrowed from the Constitution of USA. Now, moving forward, the important thing is that why the fundamental rights are called fundamental in nature. Why the fundamental rights are called fundamental rights? Because they are fundamental in nature. Because it means that the Constitution of India guarantees, all its citizens that they will be given the fundamental rights irrespective of religion, caste, color, creed, sex and place of birth. Means the fundamental rights in India is for everyone irrespective of his religion, caste, color, creed, sex and place of birth. The fundamental rights are guaranteed for every citizens and they are also being protected by the Constitution. Means in case of a violation of the fundamental rights, every citizen of India has the right to go directly to the Supreme Court of India, not to the lower courts or the high courts. Means you have the right to go to the Supreme Court of India directly in case of violation of the fundamental rights. This is a special provision the Constitution makers has given us in the Constitution. What happens is that whenever anything happens, anything wrong happens, you go to a police station, then you go to a lower court, then you go to the higher court, and then you go to the Supreme Court. But in case of a violation of a fundamental rights, the citizens of India has been given the special provisions that they can bypass the lower courts and the high courts and they can move directly to the Supreme Court of India. And the Supreme Court of India, what they do? The Supreme Court of India can issue several types of notices known as writs in order to protect the fundamental rights of the citizens of India. So you have the right to go to the Supreme Court of India directly when the things comes about the violation of the Constitution of fundamental rights. So what do you mean by the violation of fundamental rights? Suppose you are a Hindu and your name is Ajay. Suppose you are a Hindu and your name is Ajay, and there is a government in a country and they says that you are Hindu, your name is Ajay, and the government in a country says that every person who is a Hindu in a country has to pay the taxes to the government in order to follow its religion. So in order to follow the religion, the person has to pay a taxes. So government impose the taxes on the people for following the religion. But Article number 27 of the Constitution says that freedom of payment of taxes for the practice of any religion means the citizens of India do not require to pay any kind of taxes to the government for practicing their religion. Means everybody is free to follow and propagate his religion without paying the taxes to the government. So this is a violation of a fundamental rights, Article 27, and Article 27 comes between the fundamental rights, that is 12 to 35. So means if that kind of things can happen, then Mr. Ajay has the right to go to the Supreme Court of India directly and can say that the government is imposing a tax on me which is violating my freedoms of religion practices, and the Supreme Court will take certain preventive measures to enforce your fundamental rights back to you. That is why they are known as fundamental rights, because they are fundamental in nature. Means they are guaranteed as well as they are protected by the Constitution. Okay? So students, I hope it is clear to you. So you can say that the fundamental rights has been borrowed from the Constitution of Bill of Rights, from the Constitution of USA, also known as the Bill of Rights. On the other hand, the fundamental rights are called fundamental rights because they are protected as well as guaranteed by the Constitution of India. Means every citizen has been guaranteed with the certain fundamental rights, plus this also been protected. Means if the violation of the fundamental right occurs, then you have the right to go to the court of law in case of violations of the fundamental rights. So they are guaranteed and protected by the Constitution. Moving forward, the fundamental rights in India are judiciable. The fundamental rights in India are judiciable means all the citizens in India has the right to go to the Supreme Court of India directly in case of the violations of the fundamental rights. Means in case of violation of the fundamental rights, you do not need to go to a lower court or a high court, but you have the right to go directly to the Supreme Court of India in case of violation of the fundamental rights under the provision of right to constitutional remedies mentioned under Article number 32 of the Constitution. Okay, so you have the power to go and complain about the violation of the fundamental rights directly to the Supreme Court of India whenever there is a violation of the fundamental rights. Okay, I hope it is clear to all of you. Now, see, when the constitutional makers made the Constitution of India, what they did, they adopted 7 fundamental rights in the Constitution of India. When the Constitution of India was made, there were total 7 fundamental rights which were mentioned in the Constitution of India. So, write down, you can say that there are 7 fundamental rights mentioned in the Constitution of India. There were. So, what were the 7 fundamental rights? The first was right to equality. Right to equality. It is mentioned under Article 14, 15, 16, 17 and 18. So, the right to equalities are mentioned under Article 14, 15, 16, 17 and 18. So, 5 types of equalities have been mentioned under Article 14 to 18 under the fundamental rights of right to equality. Okay. The second fundamental rights mentioned in the Constitution is your right to freedom. Okay. So the right to freedom is the second fundamental right which has been mentioned in the Constitution under Article 19, 20, 21 and 22. The very important right to freedom. Later on in the class, we will discuss about the right to freedom. So various types of freedoms have been guaranteed by the constitutions, thoroughly by the Constitution to all the citizens of India. Means you have so much rights, but you have got so much rights that nobody can harm you. You have all the rights of freedom. You have everything, equality, freedom, but you have to follow the certain directives which have been included by the constitutional makers in the country. Also, there are certain exceptions also which we'll be studying in the later phase of the classes. Okay. Now, third one is your right against exploitation. Okay, it is right against exploitation. It is not right to exploitation. Okay, don't write right to exploitation. It is right against exploitation. Nobody can exploit you. Article number 23 and 24. It is right against exploitation. Moving forward, we have right to freedom of religion. Right to freedom of religion. Right to freedom of religion has been mentioned under Article 25, 26, 27 and 28. Right to freedom of religion. You have various types of freedom rights. You have various types of freedoms of religion practices in India. There are various provisions which you will study under Article 25, 26, 27, 28. Means you have the right to manage your religious affairs. You have the right to propagate your religion. You have the right not to pay the taxes to the government of India for practicing of any religion. You are free to practice your own religion. You are free to practice your own faith. The government cannot bound you to pay the taxes for following any religion. Okay, so these are guaranteed under the constitution under Article 25, 26, 27 and 28. Now, moving forward, we have cultural and educational rights. Cultural and educational rights. Cultural and educational rights. It is mentioned under Article 29 and 30. Then you have right to property. You have the right to property. Property rights, very important. They are mentioned under Article number 31. And the seventh one, the most important, under which you have the right to go to the court of law. That is why the right to constitutional remedies, have been known as the heart and soul of the Constitution by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar said that the right to constitutional remedies are the heart and soul of the Constitution. They are the heart and soul of the Constitution. Okay, so these were the 7 fundamental rights which were mentioned by the constitutional makers in the Constitution of India. But what happened in the decade of 1970s, when India was growing very fastly in the economic growth and the social growth in the country was absolutely very fast. New airports were being made, new railway stations were made, new economic zones were set up, new industrialization zones, express highways, big highways were made, and the government for those purposes needs land. And what happens is that when the government acquires the land, the people says that it is a right to property, and they move to the Supreme Court and says that it is a violation of the fundamental right of right to property. So what happens was that when the government was acquiring the land of the people, it was violating the right to property fundamental rights mentioned in the Article 31 of the Constitution. So it was hampering the economic growth, the economic infrastructure of the country. So the Supreme Court in the years of 1970s was so much busy with the property dispute case that the Supreme Court was not only a constitutional court, but it became a property dispute court. Supreme Court says that we don't have any work. What we are doing, we are dealing with that property dispute cases. We have so much big constitutional issues, euthanasia, transgender, live-in relationship, dowry, and all those kind of various big things which you have to deal with. And what we are dealing with right to property. So the Supreme Court says that this is also hampering the economic growth of the country. So the Supreme Court of India asked the government of India to take a certain step because it is hampering the growth of the country. The government of Morarji Desai took a historical decision and an amendment was done in the Constitution. 44th Amendment Act. 44th Amendment Act was passed and the right to property was deleted from the list of the fundamental rights. Article 31 was deleted from the list of the fundamental rights, and it was moved to Article 300A of the Constitution under Part 12 of the Constitution. Now, it is not a fundamental right, but it is a legal right. Means if the government acquires the property, then on the other hand, the government will provide you two things. The government will provide you the compensation or the rehabilitation. Means the government will give you land or the government will give you money. But nowadays, you don't have the right of property. Means the government, for the development, for the welfare of the country, has all the right to acquire your property and give you compensations or the new place, but you do not have the right over your property. So at present, there are only 6 fundamental rights mentioned in the Constitution of India. That is right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and education rights, and right to constitutional remedies. So these are the 6 fundamental rights which are mentioned in the Constitution of India. In the later classes, we'll discuss about these fundamental rights in detail. I hope the topic is clear to all of you. Take care of yourself. Have a nice day. Take care.